All right, so we are talking now about a commandment that maybe sometimes feels like, I mean, it's not Sabbath or kosher or not murdering or believing in God. This is a practical expression of our relationship with God and living a life that God wants us to live, which is the commandment of modesty. It actually has biblical roots, the idea of modesty, and the biblical roots have nothing to do with clothing and nothing for that matter to do with women. It is in the Torah portion of Ki Seitzei, chapter 23, verse 14. And we're actually talking there about a time of war. Maybe that's relevant to now. Maybe that's subliminally what was prompting me to do this now. In a time of war, the soldiers go out to fight. And among all the armament of the soldiers, whatever they had in those days, if it was a sword, a spear, a helmet, amid all of their armament, every Jewish soldier, biblically, we're told, must have a shovel. Why? Why does the soldier need a shovel? To whack someone with? What's the idea of a shovel? Well, it says, and again, this is all written in the verses, that because if the soldier has his, as we would say, bodily needs, we don't want little piles of excrement around the camp. So you have a shovel, dig, and cover the ground. Why? Because God is in your camp. So your camp should be holy. That is the first original source for the concept of modesty. Again, it's not dress, it's not woman, it's not any of the laws you might think of in terms of modesty. It is saying that the soldiers need to have a shovel to be modest in terms of not leaving excrement on the camp. Because God is in your camps, and therefore your camp should be holy. And that is the foundation of the Jewish law and perspective on modesty. We want to keep our bodies holy. We want to keep our homes holy. We want to keep everywhere we are holy because God is here with us. And for it to be holy, we need to be properly covered. Obviously, most classically, we think of modesty in terms of dress. And there's many, many, many laws we have that all are part of the idea of modest dress. Like only getting dressed in a bathroom. Like covering your neckline, front and back. Like covering your elbows. Like not excessively loud look at me clothing. A married woman covering her hair. And many, many, many other laws for men, for women, for what we wear, for what we say, for what we think, for how we act. Many, many, many laws that God is saying, this is how I want you to be because I'm in your camp. I want you to dress in a modest way because I'm in your camp. Why is it so important to God that we dress in a modest way? Well, obviously, there's a lot of reasons. But one foundational one, and this is the one the Lubavitcher Rebbe very often focuses on, if he touches on the idea of modesty, especially modesty in dress, is that when you dress with dignity, it gives you more inner dignity. And when you dress in a way that's exposing yourself, it creates on the inside, on the outside, a lessening of worth, like more sense of cheapness. And we might not think of it that way. I don't feel cheap. I just feel comfortable. It's very hot today in Chicago. I'm just comfortable. But the Rebbe was saying, of course, we're not thinking, I want to be cheap and that's why I'm going to dress this way. No, I hope that's not going through any healthy person's head. But it's almost like just what happens when we act in a certain way, when we treat our bodies in a certain way, when we treat ourselves in a certain way. It's just the natural message that we are not wanting to absorb, not striving to absorb. We're not trying to denigrate ourselves, but just what we do absorb. Now, obviously, if you talk about clothing and it might be like, whoa, what am I supposed to give my God my whole wardrobe? Everything I have is wrong. Everything I have doesn't work. I would say, give God something. Maybe give him your neckline, maybe give him your elbows, maybe give him something that doesn't feel refined, or maybe it's too tight. Maybe your body is a little different than when you first bought it. It doesn't feel befitting for the daughter of the king. That's in essence how every Jewish woman is supposed to look at herself. Every Jewish man should look at himself as the son of the king. Every Jewish woman should look at herself as the daughter of the king. If it doesn't seem appropriate, at least one at a time, toss them out. One at a time, one at a time, one at a time, and we make bit by bit by bit a big change. Has anyone here done this? Has anyone here ever looked at their clothing and said, I don't think it's right, give it away, throw it out, and has seen a difference?
I've done it with many pieces of clothes, changing my wardrobe completely, but I haven't noticed any difference.
Meaning on the inside, you feel you're the same you,
Yes.
just wearing different clothing. I
Yes.
hear that. Anyone else has, well, again, the first step is you have to have done it to be able to comment on this, but that you've done this. So Menucha's saying she's completely changed her wardrobe. And yet she says she doesn't feel any inner difference. The wardrobe is different, but she doesn't see any inner change because of that. Anyone else has done it? Has changed? I'm not saying you have to change everything, but have looked at certain items that said, no, not appropriate. Not for this season. I'm putting it on the side. I'm going to put it. Sometimes we feel so hard for us to give up our clothing. So we'll just put it in the back of the closet, and then maybe in the back of the closet for enough seasons that we'll decide that actually it's just taking up space and discard it. I had a good friend who, when she transitioned from pants to only skirts, she just kept her jeans for so long. She kept thinking like, I'm going to change them into skirts somehow. Just was like almost emotionally something until she finally was like, just taking up space. Get rid of them. Anyone else besides Menucha has done anything along these lines? And you seen?
I've done it. I've done it in the same story with the jeans. For some time, I kept the jeans just to wear at home. But then I got rid of
That's a stage. You're going to wear it in the house. You still love them, want them, enjoy them, and then gradually you can disengage.
Yeah, and now I don't have anything that I cannot wear everywhere.
Did you see any change because of that?
Definitely. I feel like now I wouldn't be able to wear anything else. And I feel that inside I changed because of that.
So that's interesting because Menucha and Rachel did the same thing. I mean, obviously, maybe the details were different, but in essence, they did the same thing. And Menucha said, being very honest, and I appreciate that, she said, I don't see any interchange. I know this is what God wants. And Rachel's saying she does see an interchange. What's the interchange look like for you?
For me, more self-respect. The feeling of doing the right thing. I feel like this is mine. This is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm happy to be doing it. Maybe if Menucha from the beginning was like the very righteous inside, she didn't have to change.
Who knows? And I think it could be that, or it could just be that I think every one of us has different sensitivities. Just like, let's say you're exhausted, like you slept 2 hours last night. Let's say actually you and all your friends, go back to like when you were like 18 or 25, you all slept 2 hours last night. So the next day, one of you has a stomach ache, one of you has an upper back ache, one of you has a lower back ache, one of you has a migraine. All of your bodies are saying, help, stop, don't abuse me like this. But one person is going to feel it in this part of their body, and one person is going to feel it in another part of their body. We all have different sensitivities, and it's in our service of God. We all have different sensitivities, which means it makes perfect sense to me that Rachel and Menucha could do something very similar. And Menucha could feel, I'm doing what God wants, and I know I'm doing the right thing. And Rachel could say it was transformative. I mean, is she doing something different? Probably not too much. Maybe a little, maybe not at all. But everyone has a different sensitivity in their soul. And for one person, whoa, that made a difference. And for another person, of course, it made a difference. But you don't see it as impactful. One person, the first time they light Shabbos candles, whoa, my gosh, that was such an experience. Another person said, it felt right. I felt I was connecting to my roots. I envisioned all the matriarchs, going back to Sarah. But it's not the same like a person that's just there and spends 20 minutes by the candles crying or shaking or just feeling the light. All of us have different souls and different soul sensitivities. So Rachel said she felt like more, I don't know if you use the word dignity, worth, respect, something like that. Why did you feel, I mean, again, you just might have felt it without knowing why, but do you have any sense of why you felt that?
The sense of connection to the good thing, to God. I don't know, I like this feeling of doing the right thing.
And knowing you were dressing in the right way made you feel good inside yourself about yourself and who you are as a person. I hear that. Anyone else? Anyone else has done something, maybe again, not as dramatic as Rachel and Menucha, but something to their wardrobe and has seen or not seen any difference on the inside?
I can add to this. It's been a long time ago, but before when I was choosing my wardrobe, I think the focus was for me to look sexy, and that's how I looked at clothing that I was picking. And when I changed it, I mean, it's still important for me to look nice and have my outfits put together and everything. But I think it's in a different way. So I guess that's probably brought me to a different level, that I want to look more like I don't know, a lady instead of looking sexy.
That's, I think, a very, very, very telling point. A very telling point. And you could say, like, that's what Chava was thinking when she was getting dressed. I want people to look at my body. I want people to look at me as a body. But honestly, she's being honest. That's the messages we all grew up with. She's just a natural victim of society, as we all are, as has been for all time. You know, the idea of objectifying women is not like this new 21st century issue. It's always been like that, which means women always were given that message. Your value, your body, higher value, higher exposure, and more this and more that. And, you know, this is your merchandise. This is what you're selling. This is how you're important, so to speak, to some people, to the world around you. So yeah, we all, you know, you might have said, no, I didn't think it was sexy. I just thought I had to look pretty. But, you know, yeah, that's definitely the message we all receive. And maybe some people were like, oh, I never heard that message, or I never absorbed that message, or I rejected that message, or, you know, God protected me. I was too heavy to ever listen to that message, ever want my body to be exposed. But most of us at a certain point, yeah, we heard that message. And yeah, we responded to that message. And when you're saying, wait, God doesn't want me to dress like this, so at a certain point, I'm going to give in to God, or maybe I'm going to stop this, maybe I'm going to stop that. You know, it's usually a gradual process for most of us. There should be that inner shift, even as Chava is saying, I want to look good. Of course I want to look good. And by the way, we're supposed to want to look good. And we're supposed to look good. I said the daughter of the king, I think the daughter of the king should look good. We're supposed to look good. That's part of how God made us and who we are. But not that I need people to be looking at my body. I'm not trying to be a body on the market. I don't want to look at myself as a body. So when we are trying to, like going back to Chava, you know, how old she was then or until what point, I don't think she was feeling, I mean, she could talk up because I'm not talking for her, but I don't know that she was feeling, oh, I have so little worth. The only thing that's valuable to me is my body, so that's what I want to show. It's not usually as conscious as that. But the subliminal messaging is my worth is very tied into how much attention I'm attracting. Chava, what do you think? Because you're the one talking, so I shouldn't give commentary on your words when you're right here to say it yourself. What do
Yes,
you
of
think?
course. Of course, I want to attract attention. That's what it was. Like, it was important to me.
Was it tied into the idea of self-worth? Was that like the message you absorbed or the message you had on your own, or not really?
Not consciously, not consciously. maybe, but not consciously. Just that was, like you said, that was the society I grew up in, that that's considered to be uh, what's the right word? To dress like that, like I don't know, like it's like you go to look for a dress, right? Like let's say nightgown. Think with sleeves, like non-existent, right? So it's like that's a whole industry, the whole expectation. If you going out at night, it should be like your body should be very open, like on the back, or up front, or legs, or whatever. So that's was that's a style that's expected in a society, in a group of friends and relatives.
And that gets you attention. That gets you what we're viewing as positive attention. And therefore, it's like building you up.
I don't know. It's not conscious.
So we have Rachel's version, we have Chava's version, we have Menucha's version. This is great because we're all different and we all, again, are coming from different places and react in different ways. I think they were all great, authentic voices. Anyone else?
Can I add something?
Yes, sure, Rachel.
I remember you mentioned, maybe I already said that before. You mentioned once that covering your hair is good for your children. That was
And
enough.
grandchildren.
That was enough for me to always cover my hair.
That's a sensitive person. Yes, it is the only thing where it explicitly writes that it brings blessings to children and grandchildren. Covering their hair brings blessings to children and grandchildren. It's written in 4 different places in the Zohar. So, but that's Rachel. But just again, focusing on the shining this light. So Rachel said, I heard it. I want that. I'm going for it. And someone else could say, I heard it. And it's very hard. It's very challenging. I wish I could have Rachel's dedication, commitment, discipline, but that's, yes, children and grandchildren. Only thing I know where it literally writes it like that, children and grandchildren, 4 times in the Zohar, 4 times. All right.
I also want to add, since I started changing, I've seen so many blessings in my children and grandchildren. Like I explained that I didn't feel much changes inside of me, but because I've seen so many miracles, blessings in my family, so I added more. So definitely outside, I see many, many blessings.
So you're saying it wasn't not that you saw the inner change that
Yeah.
in a different way Rachel and Chava saw, but the bottom line, as Rachel is saying, that God says, because God knows this is challenging to us. It's always like there's this relationship. The more important it is, the more difficult it is. Bottom line. That's life. I'm sure we all know that. I don't have to teach that to you. You don't need to come to a Jewish class to hear that. But in case you never realize, I'm teaching it to you. The more important, the more difficult. And the more difficult, the more God responds. It all matches. It's more difficult because it's more important. It's more difficult. The way God can respond and open up that flow of blessings is going to be commensurate with the difficulty. Now, some people could say, it's not difficult for me. Oh, that's not so hard. Change my wardrobe, get a few different outfits. Not a big deal. I love to cover my body. Why would I want my body on display anyway? Especially because I'm not 18 anymore. Like, this is a great concept. And they might find kosher, Shabbos, or not gossiping. They might find those as the major challenges. But for most of us, and we'll discuss hopefully soon why, dressing with dignity, with modesty is very challenging because it's very important. And the more important, the more challenging, and the more blessings. So I'm really, really happy that Menucha can say so strongly that the blessings she sees. That's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. In general, there's a concept in Judaism, almost like the opposite of, let's call it, Freudian psychiatry, that after the actions come the heart, meaning in the Freudian version of the world, we have a bunch of base, messed up instincts inside, passions and desires and whatever, and they mold our actions. And of course, there is a concept that our inside molds our outside. Of course, there is. But Judaism says, Torah says, your actions impact your inside. After the actions comes the heart. You want to be a compassionate person? Act like a compassionate person, and the compassion will come. You want to be a loving person? Act like a loving person, and the love will come. You want to be a joyous person? Act like a joyous person, and the joy will come. That simply, honestly, I've done it many times over many years, and I have to say that simply. It really, really, really works. When you act compassionate, you feel the compassion. When you act loving, you feel the love. When you act joyous, you feel the joy. When you act energized, you feel the energy. Our actions mold our inner reality. Very powerful practical principle. So this action of dressing modestly in whatever fashion, if dressing modestly means I only get dressed in a bathroom, if it means I cover my elbows and my collarbones and my knees, if it means I wear a skirt and not pants, covering my hair, whatever it means. And as I'm saying, there's so many options to start with. The actions change our inner reality. It's supposed to change our inner reality. Every action is supposed to change our inner reality. And here it's very clear what the change is supposed to be. The change is to refine us. So it's interesting because we had our 3 contestants, so to speak, 3 people that have gone through this process with 3 different perspectives on it, which makes, of course, perfect sense. As we said, everyone's so different. But from a person saying, I didn't really see that inner change and shift and refinement, to Chava's version of it, to Rachel's version of it. 2 different, but both of them really being affected by the outer modesty and dignity and how that changed the inside. You know, when we think of modesty, some synonyms: dignity, refinement, grace, royalty, regal. That's the feeling of modesty. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people, when they hear about modesty, they have sort of like almost like a negative knee-jerk response. Anybody here had that experience at any point when they were introduced to this concept of like sort of a negative feeling? And anything has helped them unravel that or not?
Okay, I'll speak up. When I saw, let's say, religious people in Chicago in mass, my first opinion was that they don't care about their style. They don't care the way they look. And it was very, what's the right word? It didn't like bring me closer,
Then bring it
right?
closer.
It didn't bring me closer. Yeah, that was forgot the word. So
Was it turn off?
yeah, it was a turn off, and maybe not a turn off, but something kind of not exactly turn off, but somewhere there. Yeah, and when like I decided that I'm going on this path, I was like almost saying, I proved to myself that I can figure out how to dress up modestly and stylish. And it's not easy, but I know it's doable. I know it's just so like I'm just answering your question that my first vision of the people who dressed modestly wasn't something that I looked and said, oh, I want to look like them. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It was hard work through this is God's will. That's what I have to do. It's I just have to figure it out somehow. I like for me it was I don't want to look like them. I'll find a way.
And you did. And we
I
all
know.
are witness to it. You did.
I think now I look like everybody else, and but I'm just sharing
I'm
my
thinking as you're
my
saying
journey.
that, I'm thinking you're saying that about the Rebbe's wife, Lubavitch Rebbe's wife, Rebbe and Chaimushka, because there's this like one famous picture of her. And I know one of my students in high school, she said she loves that picture. It's maybe a little of a controversial picture in terms of is this how a Rebbetzin, the wife of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, is supposed to look? She said, I love it. I love it because she looks so good. And you could see she wants to look good, and she does. Obviously, within all the laws, she's looking good. And it was very interesting, this concept with Rebbe Chaim Mushka. It's really very interesting. Very interesting. And I'm not going to say I can answer it. But on one hand, we know, like, for example, I know this incident that happened when she was in Europe, when the Nazis had occupied Paris, and they were still in Paris, which means tremendous peril to their lives. And somebody had come to do something surreptitiously. And when he came into the apartment where she was alone, she went and she opened the door. And he's like, what are you doing? This isn't fun and games here. And she's like, what are you talking about? There's the laws of yichud. Yichud is meaning that a man and a woman cannot be alone if the door is closed. It's an aspect of modesty. So she literally, like we would say, put her life on the line. She literally was risking her life that anyone could pass by. Anyone could understand these are Jews. Anyone could understand these Jews are doing something they're not allowed to be doing. She's like, what's the question? We have to follow the laws of modesty. So we have that on one hand. On the other hand, when we look at her and we see, she dressed very elegantly. She had very, very beautiful clothing. Everyone that visited her always commented not only on her personal appearance, but also her home, also how she set her table. It wasn't just the nail polish. It was everything she did in a very, very elegant, expensive, beautiful way, like very, very high class beauty. And some people are going to say, like, why? And she's a Rebbetzin. She's so holy. She's so godly. She was so righteous. She performed miracles, stories of her blessings, and we know stories of the miracles she's accomplished. So we know she's so careful with these laws of yichud, which are laws of modesty in essence. We know she has such godly spiritual powers, as the Rebbe himself is attesting to her, as we call it, tzidkus, incredible godliness and holiness and righteousness. We know she worked miracles. We know she was the only one her father, the Rebbe at that time, trusted. She was officially responsible, for all of his legal matters. She was the one he chose to take into exile with him. When he could take one family member, he took her. So we know all this, and yet we know that she always looked good. And that was obviously, therefore, important because, as we all know, it's not so easy. You got to work at it. So she always looked good. She always looked very high class, very elegant, very beautiful, modest, but very beautiful, which obviously means it was very important. That's our job. Meaning, as Jews, we're supposed to impact the physical reality. Beauty, having, if it's beautiful clothing, a beautiful appearance, a beautiful home, a beautifully set table, we're working with the physical and we're using it as a vehicle for God. Just trying to understand and put all the pieces together of a very enigmatic personality. Maybe she is fulfilling a godly job, a godly purpose by using beauty as a tool to serve God. And maybe we're all supposed to try. I remember one year, in honor of her passing, I took on 2 resolutions: that I regularly polish my silver and that I use china every Shabbos. Not paper plates, real china. And I meant that very seriously. It wasn't so easy for me to do either of those things. But I really felt this was a connection to her. This was taking that vision of beauty in the china and the polished silver and bringing it into the world. So maybe when you see these religious women that don't look so great, it's not because that's what is the value system, but rather, like everything else, it's, not so easy. It's hard. It takes effort. And maybe some of us have a greater talent or sensitivity or significance to it. So we invest more. But I think the Rebbitzin reflects like the ultimate woman and the ultimate spiritual woman. And we see how she did it. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this? This feeling, this like almost negative perspective or not? Maybe you looked and you said, "Oh, I love the way religious women work, how they dress."
I think it depends on personality. Some people are more stylish and they coordinate colors and style, and for them it's important. And some people just cannot do that. And they don't see it, how some they put some clothes, but it's not important to them, but it's like it's not, they don't see it.
So you're saying it has nothing to do with one's relationship to God or lack of
Yeah,
relationship to God.
it just
It's
style.
just a gift.
Just
Some people have the gift, some
you
people don't.
know, just I see this all the time, and I'm just wondering how they don't see that this color not coordinate, or even in the houses they put furniture or color of the or interior design. It doesn't go well, you know. But some people they don't have this ability. It's
Right.
just individual.
Absolutely. We're all so different. We're all so
Yeah,
blessed in so many different ways. And some people
people.
didn't get that blessing.
Yeah, and they don't see it, and or they have their own version of style, you know.
I think what you're saying
And
is so true. And I think what Leigh is saying also, feeding back to what Chava was saying, is like there's the laws, and then there's how much you care about this issue, how much talent and sensitivity you have in this issue. You know, some people, and I like how Leah brought it into the beauty in the home as well, which is, of course, obviously the same visual sensitivity to beauty. And some people have it, and some people don't. And people could spend a lot of money and not have it. People could not have a lot of money and have it. And you see it in when you walk into certain homes, there's a certain harmony, beauty, sense of something that works.
style, you know, and style. It has to be also, you know, some people they mix one style and another, and mm, it's just how you see the design and style and colors, everything, you know, elegance.
Absolutely. So I think that that plays into each one of us as we're, it's almost like responsibility, especially if you're religious or if among your friends you're viewed as religious, then you have to even work harder to make sure you look good because I'm not good at this, but I represent it. You know, I'm not good at this, but people are going to look at me and make judgments based on me. So, you know, it's a responsibility because some of us don't have that gift, but we still have to try to make sure we look good. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
We
Anyone
have,
else? Any other thoughts on this?
I want to add, like we have to understand when the family has like 8, 11 children, it's a priority to give like Jewish education, and they pay a lot for Jewish schools, and they don't always have extra money to spend like on fancy furniture, expensive clothes. So
That's
I,
very true. Which
yeah.
means you could say, almost like responding to Leah or Chava, the people could have a tremendous sense of style, or they could care and they could want
It doesn't have to be expensive.
It's all about priorities.
priorities.
Where you
Priorities could be money, or priorities could also be time and effort. Like, am I going to put the time and effort in this when I'm mothering my 11 children or
Yes.
but I
Yeah.
do think there, I mean, maybe this is my perspective. I do think there is on some level a sense of, but we represent something. I so many times go through my wardrobe, not in terms of modesty, but in terms of like literally, is it too, as I would say, schlumpy? Is it too like, it's comfortable? I like best my oversized, schleppy, comfortable clothing, but you know what? No, I like it. I have it in my closet. It's modest. It's not how I'm supposed to look. It's not how I'm supposed to look. And I Every time, just give them, for they become demoted to my Friday when I'm cooking for Shabbos clothing. I'm cleaning my house clothing, and then I'm like, just get rid of them. So I agree with you, Menucha, and thank God I have 11 children myself, so I know exactly what you're saying. And I think there's a certain room to say in your house, this, that, and obviously, like Leah said, I think she's very correct. Some of us are just better at it than other. And I think that was also Chava's point. We prioritize it more, or we care about it more, or we're good at it more. And what you're saying is very, very, very true. We have a lot of other things on our plate, and especially if you're a mother and have lots of children, there's so many, it's money, but it's also time and effort. But I don't think any woman, it's good for her to walk around looking like she's a shmata. I don't think that's good for a woman. That's not how God made us. God made us that we should have a sense of beauty. I might not have any style, so my version of looking good might look very different than someone else's who has more style, or has more money, or has more resource, or has more time to work on it. But it's not just the same way I was saying before, and I mean it, that when you dress immodestly, it does affect you on the inside, even if it's very subtle and you're not aware of it. And like going back to what Chava said, when we're acculturated to want to look at my body, of course that objectifies us on the inside. Of course that makes me look at myself, that my worth has a lot to do with my body. And if I have a better body, I have more worth. And if I don't have such a good body, I don't have as much worth. But even the person that thinks they have a lot of worth, their worth is a body. That's really very low level perspective on your worth. So the same way I believe in that, I also believe that if a woman always is walking around not looking good and knowing she doesn't look good, maybe not even caring if she looks good or not, that's also not good for us. It's very interesting. The Lubavitcher Rebbe very often, when he spoke about covering the hair, he would say many, many, many times, get a beautiful wig. You should look beautiful in your wig. You should feel beautiful in your wig. A woman should feel she looks good. The moments when you do want to look good, I think it's important that a woman should look good. Maybe not with style, maybe not that anyone else thinks she looks good, not that anyone's noticing, but inside yourself, I think it's important for a woman to feel she looks good. I think that's part of how God made us.
Actually, you look very good tonight.
Thank you.
This yellow, it's exactly what it is.
Exactly. Okay, good. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this?
So I wanted to say that there are couple of factors here. So one is that we talked about that people have different visions of the style, right? Something that like I would look at like how the woman is dressed, and I think like, well, that's not very flattering, but it's beautiful, looks beautiful to her. That's how she sees it. So, and then another thing is that the person can have his mood down, right? He could be depressed, like the woman can be depressed, so she doesn't want to dress up or she doesn't want to look good. She feels like looking like a shmata, something like that. So, that's an impacting factor.
Absolutely. And I think what you said, Polina, is so true about style and what we think looks good. I remember this so clearly. In my school, I had a school, the first day of the month, girls didn't have to wear uniform. They could wear their own clothing, and the rest of the month they wore uniform. And my only awareness of style was seeing what the girls wore. And I remember very clearly one year, because of course they're all, teenagers, which means everyone wants to look unique, which means exactly like everyone else. And all the girls were wearing a certain style. I don't remember what it was. It was maybe like the top was short and the bottom it was like a 2-layered look, and like one was short and one was long. I don't remember which was long and which was short. But I remember like that first Rosh Chodesh, that first day of the month when everyone could wear their clothing, they all wore it. And I, as the innocent person that has no clue what the style is, I thought it looked so horrible on every one of them. I was like, oh my gosh, like if only they knew what they really looked like. And it was very interesting to watch myself, because month after month they kept wearing this style. And at a certain point, I started seeing how it was sort of cute. And at a certain point, I started seeing how it looked good. It was like I was being affected by month after month seeing this is the style. So yeah.
You started to grow into that.
Yeah, exactly. Like people say you have to acquire a taste for sushi. We acquire taste for what looks good based on what we're bombarded with.
Hmm.
Now, some people have style and they're beyond being bombarded, and the rest of us, our sense of what looks good, obviously our own bodies, our own figures, our own colors, but what we're bombarded with.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what I wanted to do was really understand this idea on the inside that, and I really like how Chava started us off. And I think that was like really beautiful in terms of us really understanding how it could seem, and like, how one could look at this. And then Chava said, and I made this resolution, I'm going to be modest and I'm going to look good. And she clearly does. Why am I saying this is so important? It's very interesting. There's a midrash on Genesis discussing creation. It says that when God created woman, right? First there's Adam, man, and then there's, as I say in the English, Eve, in the Hebrew, Chava, woman. How did he create woman? It says that he took the rib from man, from Adam, and he fashioned it into woman. So the verse says that God built the rib that he took from man and fashioned it into a woman. The Hebrew word for built has another meaning, which means considered. In the Hebrew, it's vayiven, which means he built or means he considered. So this midrash, the rabbis, the sages say, why is this word used? It means built, but also means considered. Because God was considering, so to speak, what part of Adam's body should he use to create woman? And he said, I'm not going to create her from Adam's head, then she'll be swell-headed. I'm not going to create her from Adam's eyes, then she's just going to be like so flirtatious. I'm going to create her from the modest part of man. For even when he stands naked, that part, the rib, is covered. And then, as he, from this rib, built a woman, it says, as he created each limb of Chava, of Eve's body, he said to her, be a modest woman. I find that midrash so personally impactful. Just envisioning God building woman. We're all an extension of woman. And what is God saying as he builds my neck and my throat and my shoulder blades and what is he saying part by part? Be a modest woman. It's unbelievable to me. This is like even now when I'm giving it over, I'm getting so affected by the idea. And I think this really explains to us why, for most of us, if you're regular, normal woman, this is such a challenging commandment. And that means it was always challenging. It's not 21st century America, it's challenging. It's not in the summer, it's challenging. It's not with today's styles, it's challenging. In essence, it's challenging because it's our essence work. If it's our essence work, it's our essence challenge, right? We said before, the more significant, the more difficult, the more reward, right? The more significant, the more difficult, the more blessings. How significant is this? God's saying this is your essence. Limb by limb, be modest, be a modest woman, be a modest woman. Just like we say we know our reason for being in this world, our personal reason for being in this world, by knowing what's most difficult for us. I mean, we're all here in this world for many overarching global reasons, like bringing redemption, serving God, transforming this world to God's home. But we also have our own personal reasons having to do with the trajectory of our own existence, all of our previous lifetimes, what we accomplished and what we failed, what we have to rectify, what we have not yet done. That's why we personally are back. And how do I know that? By what's most difficult for me, because it's most important, and therefore it's going to be most difficult. So the same way, on a personal level, what's most important for my soul, the reason my soul is in this world, is going to be most difficult. Very simply, the evil inclination is going to make sure I don't do it, or really try to make sure I don't do it, or really push me not to do it, and let me do many other good things so I could convince myself this is not so important. But it is. That's why it's so difficult. So similarly, in the entire woman, for all of us, if God is saying, in essence, I created you from that limb to build you from modesty. I'm begging, pleading, empowering each limb of your body to be modest. That's part of our essence. And that's why it's so difficult. And the difficulty is not only on this inner level, it is all the messages we're receiving from the world. It's all part of challenging what is our essence, to be modest.